I'm feeling confident, to be honest. Obviously, Liverpool's early transfer business in the summer has only added to what was already a strong Liverpool squad. It was a squad that we'd been saying was strong from the moment Jurgen Klopp left. You know, in his sort of closing speech against Wolves at Anfield, he said the same thing. This is Liverpool 2.0. It doesn't stop with him leaving and things like that. And I think Arne Slot proved that really, and only, you know, strengthened, even in terms of what he was able to do as a manager. He made the best out of, you know, players who we didn't expect a ton from, like, you know, Ryan Gravenberch and Cody Gakpo, who had brilliant seasons last season. So the idea that those players can grow even more because they're only young players, the idea that Liverpool are bringing in a couple new younger players as well who can only get better when they join is very, very exciting.
You mentioned transfer, so I want to circle back to that in a minute, but I want to ask Harry just quickly, do you think Arsenal can challenge better? You know, what will it take to topple Liverpool?
A little bit more luck, to be honest with you. I'm not taking anything away from Liverpool. I thought they were excellent last season. They hit a level that, I've got to be honest, I didn't expect in the immediate aftermath of Jurgen Klopp's departure. And so I take nothing away from them, but I do feel that Arsenal were a little bit below it last season. I think, yes, they managed to finish second, and that will look good in terms of it being their bottom line these days. But Arsenal were miles off of them. And I think that was partly down to some things that were within Arsenal's control and partly down to some things that weren't. You know, the injuries were a big issue. I know it sounds like I'm sitting here making excuses, but to be without Saka for 2 months, Odegaard for 2 months, Martinelli, Jesus, Havertz, to be without all these key attacking players, it did hurt Arsenal and impact them. Can they prepare better? Can they manage the minutes of some of their key players better? Absolutely. But I think if they can, you know, get on top of the fitness troubles that they suffered with last season, that by default makes them stronger challengers than they were. They've got some business to do this summer as well. And hopefully, if they can get that right, that will give them a little bit more of a boost. But I think Arsenal will have to feel confident in the fact that they can challenge better than they did last season. Because if you go back the last couple of seasons, Arsenal have always been there or thereabouts. Last season felt like a bit of an anomaly. And I think they'll be ready to go again come the start of the new campaign.
Do you think this is Arteta's last chance to win something with Arsenal?
I think a lot of people will view it like that. I think a lot of people will look at it and say, you know, he's had a fair bit of money to spend. He's had a good amount of time, and that now it's the point where Arsenal should be getting over the line, and it's the point where Arsenal should be, you know, making all of that count. I think it depends on if Arsenal fail to win. I think it depends on why. You know, you go back to last season, as I've said, and you look at all the factors, the sendings off. Some were right, some were completely and utterly disgraceful, in my opinion. I think most football fans would agree with that. And you know, so you've got to be able to sort of break it down and figure out what is Arteta's fault, what is Arteta responsible for, and you've got to be able to look at the things that were maybe out of his control. I'm not in that camp personally right now, but you know, it will depend on how the season goes and what we all believe to be the problems should Arsenal fall short, but hopefully they don't.
And Steve, obviously, it wasn't City's best season last season, but obviously you've now got Rodri back. You've made some signings. What's it going to take to sort of turn it around and have a season that was better than last?
Yeah, last season, after the 4 previous seasons, was not good enough. That little patch where we won 1 game in 13 was a bit strange for us. But Pep, you know, the fans have always been behind him. We knew that one day this team would have a slight drop-off. We managed to pull it round with some signings in January and finish 3rd. I think the signings he's brought in are good. You know, he signed a left-back for the first time since 2017. Reinders come in the middle to link up with Rodri. And he's brought in Cherki for a bit of creativity. So there's a lot of excitement in Manchester at the minute on the City side, feeling that we can go again. The squad needs trimming a little bit. There's a lot of excess players who are not going to get game time. But I think we could get worse than last season. You know, for a lot of people, last season would be a fantastic season. But for Pep Guardiola, it was classed as a failure. But we need to get back in that title race and make sure that we're there or thereabouts come the end of the season.
So obviously with Liverpool and Man City getting business done early in the transfer window, Harry, do you feel like potentially Arsenal could get left behind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a nervousness and an anxiety, I think, among the Arsenal fans right now because, We didn't do anything in January. If you go back to last summer, you could probably argue that was slightly underwhelming as well. And as a result of that, you'd have thought that everything would be lined up and ready to go come this summer. And obviously, we're a few weeks in. I know we had that pause because of the Club World Cup and all the rest of it, but you're looking at City doing things, you're looking at Liverpool doing things, and there is a feeling that we could end up getting left behind. But it's not time to panic yet. It's way too early in the window to be feeling that way. I think for Arsenal, it's very clear what their needs are. I think they need to bolster their attacking options, particularly in that centre-forward position. And we know that they're in the mix for a couple of centre-forwards. Sesko's been talked about a lot. Gyökeres has been talked about a lot. Which one of those Arsenal push hardest towards remains to be seen. So we're going to have to wait and see. But there is that feeling that, if we don't get business done early and we're not ready to go at the start of their campaign, we could be left behind. Remember, last summer, people were saying, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. And the only attacker we got in through the door was Raheem Sterling on loan. So that's where the anxiety and the frustration, I think, comes from. And Arsenal as a football club, I think, have to understand that's going to be the case until they show us that they're going to do some serious business.
Right, so quickly, before we reveal the fixtures, I just wanted to ask Josh and Big Steve. Josh, you could go first. Are you happy with your signings? What else is needed?
Absolutely. It looks like we're going to get Milos Kerkez through the door any minute now as well. Obviously, Florian Wirtz we expect to arrive this week. I'd still like to see a number 9, to be honest. Feels like something Liverpool have as an area of need, and I'd like to see Darwin Núñez unfortunately depart the club. I think that project has run its course now, so they would be the sort of main things for me.
And Steve, are you happy with your signings? Is there anything you feel like Man City still need?
I think we're happy with it. I'd like to see a right back come in. I'm not sure who's going to play right back at the minute, but you know what Pep's like. He does like to play midfielders at full back and stuff like that. So if I could choose anyone at the minute at any position to strengthen, I'd probably go for a right back.
Perfect. So it's now 9 a.m., which means the fixtures have been released to the public. Off the bat, what are we thinking? I mean, I keep going back to you, Harry. I feel like you're talking a lot. The first sort of opening fixtures, here they are as well on the screen. But for Arsenal in particular, I think it's United away, Liverpool away, and Newcastle away within the first 6 games. So they're on screen there. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a really, really tough start. I don't think Arsenal could have asked for a more difficult start. As you mentioned, Man United away. I know that United haven't been at the level in recent times, but it's never an easy place to go for Arsenal, Old Trafford. You look at the Liverpool in the 3rd fixture away from home. That's a game that could, if it was further on in the season, you'd argue would have potentially big implications on the title race. I suppose from an Arsenal perspective, at least you get that one out of the way nice and early. And Manchester City is Arsenal's 5th game at home. Before, as you mentioned, Newcastle away in the 6th fixture. So there's a couple of winnable home ones there at the beginning. Leeds at home, Nottingham Forest at home. But, it just emphasizes the point that we were just making, doesn't it? That Arsenal really need to get their business done, get themselves ready, get themselves prepared to hit the ground running in the new season. I know you're not at your best in the first couple of weeks of the Premier League season. We've seen that over the years. Teams take a little bit of time to get going and to get moving. But I think with a fixture list like that right at the start of their campaign, and I know it works both ways, opposition versus Arsenal, it works the same, but you've got to be ready to hit the ground running, because if you're not, you can find yourself a fair few points behind after a couple of weeks in the season, and you don't want to be playing catch up from that early on in the campaign.
So for you, Steve, what is the highlight game of the opening weekend? Which one stands out the most to you?
It's got to be Arsenal, isn't it? Manchester United, Arsenal at Old Trafford. I mean, that is a great fixture to kick off the season. There'll be a few Man United and Arsenal fans reacting to that this morning. I can imagine it's going to be a bit hot online. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We've got Wolves away, which last year was a struggle. I think we won 93rd minute, something like that. So it's not always plain sailing there. But no, it's a good opening weekend to look forward to. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the games now. It's starting to feel a bit real now. When the fixtures get released, you can start to sort of plan your trips and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited for it. Josh,
who has the easier start? I mean, obviously you said you're pretty confident as well going into the season. It's quite important, I feel, to get a good start. Obviously, it's important how you finish, but yeah, who do you think has the easiest start? And would you boys agree with whatever Josh says?
I do like the look of Liverpool start, to be honest. You know, that Burnley game being away is a tricky one. You sort of look for the newly promoted sides early to see if you can try and get, you know, what should be an easier fixture on the board there. But Burnley is always a difficult place to go. I'm hoping it's not a rainy day in September. I'm hoping it's a nice sunny day in September that we get to go there, so we're not sort of competing with all the high winds and stuff. It's a good first fixture for the Reds being at home to Bournemouth. It is on a Friday night, which always throws up a few variables, but it being a championship celebration and things like that should hopefully sweeten the deal in Liverpool's favour. I think City have got a relatively easy start. Wolves are always a bit of an unknown entity, aren't they? They could come flying out the traps there. Being at home 5:30 on that Saturday as well could mean that there's sort of a banana skin for City, but there's a couple of ones in their first five that don't look too challenging besides Arsenal away. It's just interesting, isn't it, that all three of the teams who finished in the top three last season have got to sort of face each other besides Liverpool and City in that first five, but Liverpool City still coming relatively early on in the season. So it's dead exciting. As Steve said, this all makes it feel real now. You know, it only feels like the season finished, I mean, simultaneously for me about 10 years ago, but also about a week ago. So you already feel ready for the new football season to come around when these come out.
So I didn't ask any of you your predictions for who will win the title, but so I'll touch on that in a sec. But Harry, the order of the fixtures. So does that make you feel confident that it's out of the way and you can have maybe more of a smoother ending to a season rather than sort of what happened last season? Well, if Arsenal were competing late on, they would have had to face Liverpool and sort of what would have been a really busy end to the season.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, to kind of put your finger on exactly how it's going to work. If you look at it through the kind of a glass half full prism, then you'll say there's some big fixtures there that Arsenal will be getting out of the way nice and early in the campaign, which means in theory that as the season goes on, they're not going to have all of those difficult fixtures still to play. But the glass half empty view of it is you can fall behind and you're playing catch up from the very beginning, which you don't necessarily want to be doing. I guess, you know, the initial reaction when you see a fixture list like that as an Arsenal fan is to go, oh, and to worry about it and to think this is a really, really tricky start. But actually, if you look back over the last couple of seasons, Arsenal's record against the bigger sides is impeccable. It's really, really good. It's actually against some of the kind of lower ranked sides where Arsenal have struggled to break down low blocks, where Arsenal have struggled to get over the line and pick up all 3 points. So I guess, you know, I do take some encouragement from the fact that at the very least, whatever people say about Mikel Arteta and his Arsenal side, they are very competitive in the biggest of matches. And so, you know, maybe that will serve them well and maybe they'll get off to a better start than we're expecting. And if they do, just imagine the confidence that will breed moving into the kind of business end of the season. And
I don't know if you've managed to have a look at sort of the further fixtures afterwards, but I wanted to touch on sort of after the Champions League, the first round of the Champions League. Steve, I wanted to come to you. So Man City will play Arsenal, Brentford, Villa, Liverpool, and Leeds. How do you reckon they'll be able to manage those fixtures after, you know,
it's always tough after the Champions League trip. But I think Pep's going on about maybe trimming the squad down. He don't want too many players. But these kind of fixtures is where you need your squad. You know, sometimes City work with a very tight squad and the players tend to look a bit tired and jaded. But I hope he does keep a little a higher squad number this season because, like you say, injuries last season for everybody was unprecedented. So I'm hoping. I think we can do it. I think we've got a good team this season, and it's just a matter of we've got the World Club Cup starting tonight. Starting to see what he's going to play and if he's going to change the system, etc. There's a lot of changes at Manchester City this season, but I think I'm confident. I feel like last season was bad for everybody. I don't think Pep's going to want that to happen again. I think a lot of players got to take a look at themselves, and we've freshened up the backroom staff, we've freshened up the squad. So I'm expecting Manchester City to be right in the mix this season. Yeah,
freshen up the backroom stuff. I don't know if any of you saw clips of Kolo Touré taking one of the sessions. Yeah, I love that. Josh, coming to you, obviously after your Champions League games, you have Everton at home, then Chelsea, Brentford, and City away. How do you think Liverpool can manage those games? And will it be difficult?
I'd love to sit here and say that Everton at home is always easy for Liverpool. It's always a game which has a lot of emotion attached. It's not the sort of game that you want to play when there's Champions League and other things sort of distracting thoughts at that time. I guess the hope for Liverpool is that, to be able to fight on a couple of fronts this season, they're going to need to have a stronger squad, and we don't know what's going to be done in terms of outgoings with the transfers yet. But in terms of what Liverpool are bringing in, I think there's going to be a really strong squad for Liverpool this season. I thought Liverpool's squad last season was strong. I understand that Harry, talked about Arsenal's injuries before, and I completely sympathise with Arsenal fans in terms of the attacking injuries they had. Liverpool had a fair few, midfield and the goalkeeper getting injured and things like that last season, but we had the squad to be able to deal with it. And that's where I think you look at the business that's been done early, and it does make you more confident for the time that Champions League fixtures come around, and you think of, the FA Cup fixtures and how that might affect things, and even League Cup as teams progress into that. So just very excited about everything that's to come. I was even looking ahead, sort of skipping further ahead into like Champions League knockout stage and stuff. Then I was like, I'm gonna have to slow my roll a little bit here because we don't know how Liverpool are going to get on this season. But I'm giddy, to be honest, Ralph. That's just the way it is at this moment.
Yeah, literally, there's so many fixtures that clash with like AFCON and other Champions League rounds and whatnot. But I don't think we have enough time for that. So I just wanted to check how you guys feel about your last 5 fixtures. And I mean, Steve, how do you feel about City's last 5 fixtures? Burnley, Everton, Brentford, Bournemouth, and Villa, very winnable games. Does that fill you with confidence?
Yeah, well, I think everybody knows that Manchester City, towards the last 10 games of the season, I always say if Manchester City can keep on the coattails of everybody else till that last 10 games, that we tend to turn it on. We even did that this season. I think if you look at the form from January, we were right up there. So it's always interesting to see the running. I do look at the running more than the beginning. I feel that the beginning's a bit can be a bit mad. Teams are not fully established. You can catch teams cold. But by the last 10 games, everybody knows where they are. And if Manchester City are in the mix come that last 10 games, looking at them fixtures, then I'm quietly confident with that.
Harry, so your last 5 games, Newcastle, Fulham, West Ham, Burnley, Palace. Very winnable games again. I feel like Newcastle, again, maybe the only sort of team to really, really worry and consider for Arsenal.
Yeah, just before that, though, we play Manchester City away. So that could be huge, couldn't it, going into that kind of final stretch of games. But I think for me, Arsene Wenger used to say this, and people used to laugh at him. He used to say that it's very, very difficult for a London club because they've got so many London derbies. Arsenal played 3 London derbies in their last 5 games. Now, yes, on paper, they're against teams that you should be beating, but you should never kind of rest on your laurels when it comes to those games. So I think that they're certainly winnable fixtures, as you say, and I'd back Arsenal and fancy Arsenal if that was where they needed to make up points and do the business in terms of hopefully trying to win that Premier League title. But yeah, you got to be wary of some of those fixtures as well. So it'll be interesting, but it's the Premier League, right? It throws up surprises all the time. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what situation these teams are going to be in that you're facing at the time, how desperate or uninterested they are, depending on what their season looks like. So it's going to be fascinating, but I'm not going to look that far ahead just yet. Let's focus on that first 6 games, which is really, really difficult for Arsenal, and we'll see how we do after that.
All right, so quickly before we go, I want predictions from each of you. Starting with you, Steve.
Man City win the league, no problem.
Harry?
Arsenal win the league, no problem.
Josh?
I think you know exactly what I'm going to say here. Liverpool to retain the title.
Yeah.